sugar, honey. Let's get this money roll on. Married to the game. Fame. Standing for nothing and standing for something. You end up the same. Using this music to portray confusion. The power will prove it. It's the return of the source. If you tuned in, that's just say, of course. If you just let that, I say like sports. Looking for something that's different. Give you exactly what's missing. It's the return of the source. Bottom of the night. Suited and booted, you know what we doing. You know we ain't coming to play. Surrounded by warriors. The bold and the glorious. Don't really want war with us because we buy it, they call us Victorious. You be coming for their head spot, train for their headshot, win some, lose some. For the heart of South Bronx, home and the heart, not that I came from. Mixing the words and the sound of surrounding you, feeling the power. Put it together, the art and the rap and the jazz is the problem. Married to the game. Fame. Standing for nothing and standing for something, you end up the same. Using this music to push that confusion. The power will prove it. It's the return of the source. If you tuned in, that can say, of course. Get you down flat, I say like sports. Looking for something that's different. Give you exactly what's missing. It's the return of the source. Yeah, get it like a vibe. Get you crawling up your spine. Yeah, feel good, feel good, cause it's good for you now that you see it, you lie. Put the game in the wrong hands, off with the wrong plan. Give me that shit back. Yes, drop the beat on the 3-4 verb on the end. No, that's crap. Look at the clothes, look at the drip, look at the stereo. Look at the chains, look at the gold all up through my mouth. Where you think it started, we got it from. From the heart of darkness, don't get it wrong of the source.
All right. Gary says I've been muted. I don't know how long I've been muted. I just been talking my heart out. Good morning, good morning, good morning. 90.7 KPFK. This is your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J, and we are here live on a Thursday morning, right here broadcasting from the city of Los Angeles. They say it might rain today, but hopefully it'll be a smooth day. But this is yet another edition of our wonderful show that we have here every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. We call it STReeT SANKoFA. STReeT SANKoFA is definitely one of these places where hopefully we can continue to bring in our listening audience. You can always call in and join the conversation if you like. 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-5735. My mic sounds nice and warm this morning. Shouts out to Gary holding me down in the studio this morning. And I got a little Jay Dilla instrumental going. So hopefully Gary give us some good vibes as we are talking our talk this morning. So let's get into it. You know, STReeT SANKoFA is one of these places, again, where we are wonderfully welcoming listeners and community support, and of course, people's power. And so, as we acknowledge not only the power of radio, we also acknowledge the power of the print media. And so, I like to take a second every morning when we get on the show to broadcast some news of our local community from one of our printed news outlets. And so, you guys know one of my favorite places that I get to support, or one of my favorite periodicals and magazines that I like to support is right here, that I pick up from my cleaners right here off of Florence and Western. And I go on there and I get not only my cleaning, but I get also my local news. And of course, one of my favorite magazines that I love to support is The Final Call. Now, The Final Call is one of, I don't know if how long The Final Call has been in circulation, but it's definitely been a very consistent periodical or news outlet, or a newspaper, if you will, in our community. And so we are so grateful for The Final Call. And so this morning, this is episode volume, 43, number 26. This is a new copy. I got this fresh just for our episode this morning, and this came out just this week on April 1st, 2024. And if you guys haven't already noticed that, you can go on to finalcalldigital.com, or you can go on store.finalcall.com or finalcall.com, and you can definitely get all of the downloaded latest episodes, or latest, I keep saying episodes, latest productions, printed media of The Final Call. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring up was this really interesting thing that's happening in Mississippi. And so 6 former Mississippi officers were sentenced for the torture of 2 Black men. And this was just recent. And so I wanted to just read just a few pieces of this, because I think this was a really interesting kind of moment of our news that really didn't get, it really wasn't on the forefront of my social media. And so it wasn't on the forefront of my news, of how I consume the news. But I thought this was really interesting, because very often do we see how the murders and injustices of our system are often, they give privileges to those who are predators of Black bodies. And oftentimes we don't see justice being served. But it looks as if down in Mississippi, down in the SIP, they finally have had an opportunity to see some justice. And so here we go. 6 former Mississippi law enforcement officers, all white, were sentenced on March 19th, 20th, and 21st by a federal judge for their torture of 2 Black men in January 2023. Now, check this out. In August, the former deputies, Hunter Edward, Jeffrey Middleton, Daniel Opdyke, Christian Dedman, and Brett McAlpin, with the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, and former Richland, Mississippi police officer Joshua Hartfield. They all pleaded guilty to federal criminal charges, including conspiracy against rights, obstruction of justice, deprivation of rights under color of law, discharge of a firearm under a crime of violence, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. They also pleaded guilty to several state charges, including assault, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. And Mr. Edward, one of the defendants, was sentenced to more than 20 years. Mr. Middleton, Mr. Opdyke were both sentenced to 17.5 years. Mr. Dedman was sentenced to 40 years. Mr. McAlpin was sentenced to more than 27 years, and Mr. Hartfield was sentenced to 10 years. And it looked as if, these guys were responsible for not only the torture of a Black man, but obviously the just the embarrassment of what they put their family through. And so we want to shout out the family of Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker, who stood outside of the Jackson, Mississippi courthouse just recently with the other families who endured this violent torture. And what's unfortunate is that we want to see things like this on the forefront of the news. Finally, this type of heinousness and just audacity of these guys was finally held accountable, and they're going to finally be incarcerated for their acts. And so, finally, 6 former Mississippi officers were sentenced for the torture of 2 Black men. And I think what's really powerful as we read this, and thank you, Final Call, obviously, for giving us the news that's important for us. And this is why we want to always acknowledge these local periodicals and magazines and news outlets, because it's not just the fact that the police officers were held accountable, which is a great thing, and we acknowledge that, but I think it's more crazy to realize that these police is out here torturing people, literally. Still to this day, you see instances. This was in January 2023, and 2 Black men were tortured by police officers. And I'm not going to say what I everybody thinks I might say, but the law enforcement officers torturing 2 Black men sounds very familiar in terms of these hate groups that hide behind sheets and closed doors and join organizations that allow them to do things out in the open. And so, as these police officers are torturing this man, you can imagine the types of things that these police officers do when they don't have their uniforms on. So, that is the news, the local news for the day. So, again, welcome to STReeT SANKoFA 90.7 KPFK. This is your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J, holding it down, obviously, with my guy, Gary Baca. I couldn't do it without you, Gary. I appreciate you. I am hoping, because I can't hear what's being played back to me, but I'm hoping that we got a nice vibe with the J Dilla going underneath the music. Underneath my voice, because we like a lot of music and a nice, good vibration while we are listening this morning. As everybody is driving to school, as all my young people are heading to school and all my folks are heading to work, you guys be safe out there. Definitely have a great Thursday. And let's get into a good conversation today. So I was trying to think about something that would get us going. And I kept going back to this quote from Tony K. Bambara. From all of my folks, I'm getting ready to start teaching a literary course for my African American studies students. Shouts out all of my ethnic studies students out there holding it down. Chicano studies, holding it down. Asian studies, LGBTQ studies, queer, gender, all of those studies that we do, that we study society. But for all of my African American studies students, I'm getting ready to teach another course, a literature course, and I'm really excited to put this course together. But I came across this quote that I was reminded about as I'm preparing for my literary brain. And the quote comes from a very powerful writer by the name of Tony K. Bambara. And I want to start off by saying, here at STReeT SANKoFA, the point of our platform here is to be able to look at the culture of hip hop, to be able to not only look at it, but be critical about it, to be able to look at it from a critical lens, to be able to take a SANKoFA, to be able to even look at it in perspective, give it context, look at the history of hip hop culture in order to be very intentional on how we want to move forward with the culture. We have to understand what it is and where it came from, and what directions it looks like it's going to be headed in. And so, as we look at STReeT SANKoFA today, I wanted to talk about the role of the artist. What is the role of the artist? And this quote from Tony K. Bambara came to my mind, and this quote goes something like this: the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. And so, as I think about the artist right now in hip hop culture, I got some very, very curious things that come to mind. But the first thing I want to give you is, not only does Tony K give us this charge to our art community, to our artists, we also acknowledge that art influences society. And it does that by opening minds to portals of thought that might not otherwise be accessible. Through painting, through sculpture, through music, through literature, and the other arts, they're often considered to be the repository of society's collective memory. And artists bring this to the awareness of those who care to see it in this way. Art affects the fundamental sense of self. Isn't that interesting? Art humanizes both its creator and its audience, allowing us to understand issues beyond facts and figures. And we're on the forefront of a new age of artistic renaissance, some say, powered by visionaries, weaving the foundations of new earth. We have no choice but to wake up. We can either wake up, stand together, or fall behind the oppressive and repressive systems we've inherited. And artists are at the front lines of this revolution. And from where we stand, art is our most powerful weapon. Art is energy, and energy is currency. And again, we're talking about the role of the artist. You know, hip hop culture is so dynamic, y'all. And I love hip hop culture because there's so many contradictions within the culture. At one hand, we can say that hip hop can be very empowering to women and allow women to have a space to find voice and to find strength and to find claim of their bodies. But then we can also say in the same voice that hip hop is very misogynistic and can be very degrading to women and oppressive to women and suppressive to women and very sexist, and even the ongoings of the culture. And so hip hop is completely riddled with contradiction. But I love that about the culture because it's that kind of contradiction that allows us to see not only the beauty in ourselves, really as hip hop artists and as hip hop aficionados, but really the contradiction of us as human beings is what it creates the beauty in what it means to be human. Remember, ain't nobody perfect, y'all. Ain't nobody perfect. And so the humanity of us all is what gives us our color and our variety. And so today I want to talk about the role of the artist. And as we think about the artist, there's a few artists that really came to my mind as I talked about this concept with my loved ones. You know, it's certain people really seem like they've done a lot with their opportunity to be behind the microphone. And it's not an opportunity that many of us are granted. And so when we are given this blessing of having the ear of the people, when the people are listening, as an artist, we have a certain responsibility, or do we have a certain responsibility? What is it that we're going to say when we finally get the microphone? And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the role of the artist on this episode. Again, welcome to 90.7 KPFK. This is STReeT SANKoFA with your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J. I'm super hyped this morning because it's a good conversation to have. What is the role of the art? What is the role of the artist? Excuse me. And do we separate the art from the artist? So when we talk about the artist, one of my favorite artists, and obviously he's a really popular trending topic right now, is Bob Marley. And I love talking about Bob Marley because when we talk about the role of the artist and the responsibility of the artist, we see so many great examples of people that take their platform and they really do some transformative work with their opportunity to engage our society through entertainment. And so I want to play for you just a small clip because I want to talk first and foremost about the big gong, what they call him, the tough gong himself, Bob Marley, because Bob Marley is an artist that took the art of music, took the art of entertainment, and he did something with it. And I want to say that hip hop can learn from our brethren, from our OG, from our Baba Bob Marley. And so let's get into clip one. Let's just check out a little something from Bob.
Last month, a truce was arranged between the rival political factions in Kingston, Jamaica. A peace conference was arranged to be preceded by a peace concert for the people in a very large park. They expect over 100,000 people there. Bob Marley was invited to headline this peace concert. Marley has accepted and will return to Kingston, Jamaica. Bob, why are you returning to Jamaica?
Well, my life not important to me. Other people' life important. My life is only important if me can help plenty people. If my life is just me, my own security, then me don't want it. My life is for people. That's where me is.
Prosperity. You would have thought, yeah, Rastafari.
And that is Bob Marley, just a small clip of Bob Marley at the One Love concert. And this is a very notorious, very powerful scene in Bob Marley's life. And I have to admit, y'all, I haven't seen the One Love documentary yet or the One Love movie yet. I have to be very honest, I haven't seen it, but I'm a super big fan of Bob Marley. And I know that it's magical, and I will probably watch it when it comes on Amazon Prime. But here's the point. The point is that we're talking about the role of the artist. What is the role of the artist? Tony K. Bambara says that the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible, to make it look so good that people are fired up, they are passionate, they are inspired to create some type of change. And Bob Marley absolutely embodies and epitomizes what that sentiment is in this One Love concert. And so let me just give you a background for those of us who have not seen the One Love movie, who are not familiar with Bob Marley and his movement. I want to just give you a little insight about what Bob did at this particular concert. And again, you are tuned in to 90.7 KPFK. This is STReeT SANKoFA with your girl, Ife J.E. I can't say my own name this morning, aka Dr. J. And STReeT SANKoFA is the space where we take a journey back. We look back at the history of music. We look back at the history of hip hop. We look back at the culture, and so that we can be very intentional on how we want to move forward. Hip hop has celebrated 50 years of success. And so as we move into the next 50 years of the genre, we want to be extremely intentional, extremely clear about what we want this culture and this tradition to look like. And so we're talking about the role of the artist this morning. And we're looking at Bob Marley. And Bob Marley is an amazing human being and a great example of what an artist could potentially do if they chose to use their platform to really bring attention to issues in our communities. And remember, y'all, hip hop is supposed to be the voice of the voiceless. Hip hop is supposed to be the space where those of us who cannot find an outlet find a space to be heard, to be recognized. And the last time we were together, we talked about graffiti art. And we saw how graffiti art literally brings attention to issues. And particularly just recently, when we were talking about the issue downtown Los Angeles, the issue of houselessness. And so let us very much keep on our forefront that hip hop is the voice of the voiceless. And so as we look at the culture, we want to borrow, we want to take this sentiment of the artist having an additional responsibility, not just to entertain, but to also impact our society. And so what does Bob Marley do? So let me just give you some background. In the early 1970s, Bob Marley has a group, and the group is called the Wailers, right? And he establishes himself. I can't talk this morning. He establishes himself as a cultural and a political force, an icon in Jamaica. And he had songs that were broadly not only heard, but really addressed all types of issues. And you could say that in a way, Bob Marley was a Pan-Africanist. and definitely someone who spoke out against colonial oppressions. And one of the things that we recognize in Jamaica is that during the 1970s, there was a lot of political tension between two major political parties, and that was the People's National Party, or the PNP, and the Jamaican Labor Party, or the JLP. Now, at one point, Bob Marley was invited to do a concert, and they assumed that he was going to be kind of participating in this concert to represent the PNP crew. Okay, so leading up to this moment of him getting shot up, um, there's basically a concert that Bob Marley is invited to, and it's trying to give some information and some education and some what am I trying to say? He's just campaigning. He's campaigning for the PNP, and unfortunately, somebody uh, has they make an attempt on his life. They have an assassination attempt against Bob Marley because of him potentially performing at this event. And so Bob Marley leaves Jamaica. He leaves Jamaica. Fortunately, he's able to survive this attempt. And he decides that, look, I'm going to go to England for a little while, and I'm going to get out of Kingston, and I'm going to isolate myself because this war that's happening, between these two political parties, they essentially got the street gangs involved in it. And it's just starting to get way too crazy. And so eventually, the street gangs call a truce. There's 4 particular guys. They call a truce, and they decide, you know what? Let's make this truce real. Let's have a concert. Let's invite Bob to come back to Jamaica and to headline this concert, because this is going to be a great show to our community here in Jamaica that the war and the tension is finally over, and we're able to squash this violence that's happening on our island. And that's exactly what happens. They get some of the best artists at the time to participate in this One Love concert, and they get Bob Marley to headline it. And Bob comes and he does his Bob thing. And those of us who are Bob Marley fans know that Bob Marley was a very spiritually obedient person. And he absolutely used his platform not only to entertain us, but to worship and to give thanks to Jah, give thanks and praise to the Creator. And so these were really, you could think of Bob Marley's music in a way as gospel music. And so anyway, Bob Marley gets up on the stage and he does his music. And then he starts to dance and feel vibration and really catch the spirit of all the what he's conjuring up. And he brings these 2 representatives, these 2 politicians from the PNP and from the JLP on stage. And during this concert, at one point, the lightning even strikes, and it really magnifies the richness of this moment. And he essentially makes these people, these 2 guys, these 2 white politicians, stand on this stage in front of everybody with the music playing in the background. And what does he do? He makes them hold hands. He makes them clasp hands together. And in this gesture of them grabbing hands together, they show the solidarity is there. And with his platform and with his performance, Bob Marley is able to facilitate a very powerful political moment in the history of Jamaica. And so, again, we go back. What is the role of the artist? When you see that there is turmoil, what is the role of the artist? The artist is supposed to speak to the turmoil. The artist is supposed to make the turmoil visible to us so that we can deal with it. We can wrestle with it. We eventually can change it. That's the point. That's what Tony Cade Bombara is telling us, is that the artists should make the revolution irresistible. And so as we talk about hip hop, there's a moment, there's some things in hip hop where, our art as hip hop artists sometimes I don't know. I don't know if we're carrying on that same torch. I don't know if we are using this platform to really bring voice to the voiceless and to really be able to do transformative things in our communities and in our culture. I don't know. And then there's this thing within hip hop culture about separating, because sometimes you have to, but there's this sentiment of separating the art from the artist, because somebody could say something very powerful, do something extremely transformative. But personally, we may not agree with the way they live, or they might have done some craziness and aren't necessarily people that we think are moral. When we talk about separating the art from the artist, do we separate R. Kelly from his art? Do we say, well, I believe I can fly, but I can't agree with the way that he got down personally? Obviously, there was some problems with the way that he lived his life and the decisions that he made, but his art is great. And so there's two things kind of going on in hip hop culture. Are we taking advantage of our art and our platform? Are we using it to really bring attention to things that are important to us? Or are we also in that space in hip hop where we're going to constantly have to separate the art from the artist? Because there's people doing some great things, but they're not necessarily always great people. Let's talk about it. This is STReeT SANKoFA. This is your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J, and I would love for y'all to join me this morning. Who's up with me? 7:30 a.m. on this Thursday. Call in if you would like to. 818-985-5735, 818-985-5735. I really want to know what y'all think. You know, what is the role of the artist? Do the artists have a responsibility to society? And if we do that, are we saying artists are just entertainers, or are they social commentators? Do they have responsibility to do things in our society? When we talk about hip hop, it's really important to be able to understand, well, are our artists there to bring voice to us as a community of marginalized folks, of people who usually live on the fringes of society, on the margins of society? Are we there to use these outlets to bring our plights and our lifestyles and our circumstances to the forefront of society? Are we there just to get a bag? What is the role of the hip hop artist? So I want to get into this because this next clip that I have, I kind of found it in a way that I thought was really, really cool, because there are some hip hop artists that definitely get it. And they see that the microphone is very powerful, and they want to be able to take advantage of that. And they want to bring attention to these things that are important to us in our Black communities, our Black and Brown communities. And I think what's really powerful is that not all art has to have a social responsibility. Sometimes we can just make things that are beautiful. We could just make things that make our heart happy. But I do think that there is something to be said about a good, sweet balance of art that is there to stimulate your mind, there to entertain you, and there to help you think and to question some of the things that is happening in our world. You know, it almost goes back to that whole sentiment. Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And so again, as we talk about the role of the artist, I want to give a shout out to one artist in particular that I think audaciously speaks to what's happening in our society. At times that seems to be appropriate. At times where certain things are trending and certain topics are essential. So let's get into this next clip 2 by Toby Nwigwe.
Arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. All of y'all who think we need more evidence, you goofy. I said arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain too. Y'all hold that boy. Arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. All of y'all who think we need more evidence, you goofy. I said arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. You catch the vibe? I get off my page.
I love that. That was Toby Nwigwe, and he is a rapper out of Houston, Texas, I believe, Dallas, Texas, I believe. And he simply uses his microphone to talk his talk, man. And I love it. And he made it simple and plain for us. Sometimes as artists, this doesn't have to be a very magical moment. It doesn't have to be anything that is too intense in terms of its creation and its production. Toby simply says, arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. And if you need more evidence, y'all goofy. I just love it. 818-985-5735. 818-985-5735. Come on, talk to me, y'all. There are some artists out here within hip hop culture that absolutely believe that it is important that they use their microphone to bring attention to the things that are happening in our communities. That absolutely exists. There absolutely exists. And Toby Nwigwe is one of those. He's definitely one of those artists that is using his platform to talk about some good stuff. And so we want to acknowledge artists like that. And not just him, but other artists that continue to talk about things that are important in our community and just kind of bring another element to hip hop culture beyond what we're listening on the mainstream. Now, I'm no critic in terms of just bashing another artist. I don't necessarily have any problems with what we're listening to in the music right now. I just want more variety. I think we need to be able to have as much balance as possible. I want to be able to hear Sexy Red, no doubt. But then I also want to hear some music that is empowering to me and that makes me feel the song just came to my mind, Hustle and Motivate. You know, when I listen to Nipsey's music, I feel like going to get it, man. I feel like I can conquer the world, you know, hustle and motivate, hard work plus patience, you know? And so there's a balance that we need, y'all. It's not necessarily a criticism for one type or a preference for one type of rap music over the other, but it is a portion of us that needs to have all of our aspects of our lives spoken to, not just our sexuality, not just our finances, not just our desires for consumer goods, but also what's going on with us emotionally, what's happening to us mentally, what's happening to us spiritually, all types of different things that our art and our music should embody. So let's get into the conversation. And I want to leave you with a clip of an artist that has seemingly gotten himself into some trouble. And so there's artists that absolutely are using their platform to do some good things. And then there are some artists that are out here acting up. And so we're going to end off with that. But first, let's get into some callers. Thanks for calling in. I see Al from LA. Are you still there? Welcome to STReeT SANKoFA.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Wonderful.
I wanted to share a couple of things with you. The first one was Bertolt Brecht. His famous quote, "Art is not a mirror of society, but rather a hammer with which to form it." And the second thing I wanted to share with you is that, you know, I've done sound for rap raves. And without exception, the rappers are all political. Naturally, they're not going to be on mass media. So the artists are out there.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're not really, they're marginalized.
Yeah, I would agree.
Share with you this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that sentiment, that quote. I love that quote. And I agree with you. And I appreciate you listening. Again, this is STReeT SANKoFA with your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J. You are welcome to join the conversation. 818-985-5735. Again, that's 818-985-5735. And here's the thing, you're right. there are a lot of political artists that are out there. There are a lot of artists who are, what do we say, woke. They're woke, right? They have their eyes and their ears open. They're aware of what's going on in society. And so their music may not necessarily be a direct reflection of that, but they themselves are political beings. And so, yes, there might comes out in certain sentiments in their music. It might comes out in certain messaging in their music, but they are there. They are in existence. And I appreciate this sentiment because this is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation. As we are moving forward in the culture, what is the role of the artist? And as we see the quote from Tony K. Bambara, the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And as we see within hip hop culture, yes, there are some artists that are completely for the mainstream. They are there to entertain. They are there to promote mass consumerism, growth consumerism, things that are not helpful to our community and to our people. But then there are artists out there who take the responsibility of the art and the artist very seriously. And so we want to be very mindful of maybe supporting both types of artists, maybe not one over the other, but making sure that we have space for art that is indicative and reflective of our society and of our circumstances, and art that is also an attorney. So I think we got another caller in the line. Is this Sylvester Rivers from the Sunday Brunch Show? Are you calling in? Are you still there?
Yeah, Dr. J.
Hey now. Hey now. Welcome to
I'm
STReeT
glad.
SANKoFA.
Thanks for that topic. It's very important. I've been dealing with that topic, the artist's responsibility. But I just want to share something since you had Bob Marley on. I was in that era when that was happening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
two people were Edward Seaga, and we called him CIA Aga,
Oh my goodness.
and Michael Manley, who was a socialist.
Mhm.
People criticized Bob Marley because he wouldn't endorse either one of them.
Oh wow.
But you know, they wanted him to endorse Michael Manley, who I actually was able to have dinner with here in Los Angeles.
Mm.
But the other thing is that the movie, I did see it. I won't be a spoiler, but people criticized it because they talked about the easy Bob Marley, not the revolutionary Bob Marley. The Bob Marley, not the Pan-Africanist Bob Marley.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally, I'd like to say, as far as hip hop, it was co-opted by big money and
Yes, it was.
commercialization. So when it was the message that fundamentally got into, well, let's put in, you know, miscegenation and F this and in that.
Right. Right.
If you remember the early ones, it wasn't. But even before hip hop, if you remember the last poets, they did say words, but they did it in a more positive way.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I love that you bring in the last poets. You know, they are my go-to when I try to bridge the generational gap between my elders and my OGs and my hip hop heads. You know, I bring in the last poets all the time because they are the glue that connects us intergenerationally. Thank you so much for calling in, my brother Sylvester Rivers, giving us that great commentary. And of course, we love the context of what was happening. You know, and I love that you said that, Sly, because I haven't seen the movie yet, but I do think it's really cool to be able to look at Bob Marley as a revolutionary artist, because when I think of him as that. You know, this moment of him bringing the JLP and the PNP together at this One Love concert, to me, that's one of the pinnacles of his career. And I just love the way that, you know, that story is told. And so I hope that the audience, even if they are not given the revolutionary spirit of Bob Marley, that they're able to see his revolutionary potential and maybe inspired people to kind of learn more about him as a Pan-Africanist. So thanks again for calling in again. You can join the conversation too, 818-985-5735. Again, this is 818-985-5735. Welcome to STReeT SANKoFA with your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J. And I think I have another caller on the line, Kumal from Palmdale, line 1. Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to the show, my brother. What do you have to say? What is the role
Free land
of the artist? Free land.
I'm sorry, did you ask a question?
Yes, we're talking about the role of the artist this morning. So I
Yeah. I
appreciate your
thought you asked another.
contribution. What do you have to
Okay.
say?
So to the main point, I kind of been teaching finding your voice for about 40 years. And I think that's the primary role of the artist. So becoming a revolutionary and all of that is a hopeful outcome, but it's kind of incidental. The point you mentioned about we're not perfect is something that's commonly stated, but I've studied a couple of systems, among them the Medrunet or the Dogon system, and they believe in the perfection of the human being. And that's an idea
all
we need
right.
to talk about sometime.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't have time now. The final point I want to make is somebody mentioned that hip hop was all political, and I think it's kind of obvious that's not true. So anyway, that about
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your commentary, my brother Kumal. And he said, listen, I'm going to check myself right now. The Dogon believe in the perfection of the human body, in
Yes, ma'am.
the potential perfection. And so as we get out of these westernized brains of ours and back into
Yes,
our
ma'am.
African centeredness, that is definitely something that I'm going to adopt. And so I appreciate that commentary. And of course, y'all know, just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to dislike one another. I appreciate the sentiment. At one hand, some of us might consider hip hop in itself just to be a revolutionary culture, that it is a fundamentally revolutionary act, right? And then there's and it is political in that moment. And then there's some of us that might not recognize it as the same, and that's fine.
I'm not sure about fundamentally revolutionary, but it obviously was a break from what was happening systemically, and that kind of gets back to one of your other points about what we're hearing, and obviously who controls the consumer market for all of the stuff that we hear. Obviously, doesn't want us to hear that revolutionary voice, so you got to look other places.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And I think what we're going to take from this too is that the very first thing is to find your voice, to not stay silent, to not allow the systems that we exist in to marginalize our voices. So I love that we want to center our voice. Now, once we find it, what we say is up to you. But to know that you have a voice is very powerful. Thank you again for calling in, my brother. Thank you again. And for all the rest of my listeners, free to land by any means necessary. For all of my listeners who are curious and want to continue to join the conversation, you are welcome to do so. 818-985-5735. Again, this is 90.7 KPFK. You are tuned in to STReeT SANKoFA with your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J. And we are talking about the role of the artist. And here at STReeT SANKoFA, we like to look at the history. We like to look at the examples of the musical traditions that we stand upon as hip hop heads, so that we can be very intentional on how we want to move forward with hip hop culture. We have celebrated 50 years of the genre's success. And in order to have an additional 50 years, we want to be very clear about what this culture is, what this music is, and what the power it has and what it possesses. And so I welcome you to join this conversation with me today as we talk about the role of the artist. We've talked about Bob Marley. We've talked about my guy, Toby Nwigwe, who's used his platform as a hip hop artist to say, yo, arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. And he says it in a syncopated chant with the fly beat, and he makes it look cool. And he really does bring attention to some ills of our society in just a simple rhyme. And so we know that the political potential of hip hop is absolutely there. But we also know that some of us forget that. Some of us get into these places of being gatekeepers, and we take advantage of that position. And instead of being an artist that uses our power for good, we become artists that use our power for not so good. And so I want to end our conversation with an artist who has been accused of using his information or his platform or for not so good. And so we're going to end out with that. But first, looks like we got another caller. Stanley from LA. Are you still there?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Stanley from LA. Welcome to Street SANKoFA. What do you have to say? Welcome
Yeah,
to the conference to the conversation.
for sure, for sure. I just wanted to kind of add to what you were already saying. I think art and culture, they're symbiotic, right? They build on each other, they reflect each other, they change each other.
Yeah.
And kind of to your question, because of that, I think all artists have a responsibility to the community.
Right. Right.
Come to your point, whether it's to entertain, to inform, and things of that nature, there is still that responsibility that, hey, I'm not just a singular person, but I'm part of a community, a society. And so therefore, whatever I do has power and it has influence, and so therein lies the responsibility.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And that conversation kind of comes up not only just with entertainers, but we also get that conversation come up with our athletes. A lot of times it's like people don't necessarily intend to have platforms and don't necessarily intend for people to be listening to them, but they are. And they're expecting to have some decent examples, and so shouts out to that comment. I appreciate that. Some artists are definitely running with that charge, and some artists are having to humble themselves that, hey, too much is given, much is now being expected in return. Shouts out again to all of my listeners that are tuned in. This is 90.7 KPFK. You are with your girl, Ife Jai, aka Dr. J. This is Street SANKoFA. Much love to all of my Facebook family for joining in the conversation as well. Jasmine Hill, I see you. I appreciate you. I admire you too, my sister. Thank you for joining in the conversation and listening in this morning. And to all of my YouTube family, if you are listening on YouTube, you can always go to my channel, IFEJIE. Street SANKoFA is the YouTube channel. And you can also stream live on kpfk.org. And I just want to encourage everybody, for those of you who are calling in, for those of you who are listening, if you like what you are hearing, then you know that we are only supported. We are only supported by listener support. It's because of the people that we exist. And so I love y'all so much for my Facebook family. I love you, my brother, Star Child. I love you, my sister Jasmine. I love my Facebook family. I love y'all out here in the city of Los Angeles. It's so refreshing to run into people who are listening. But I want to encourage you, subscribe. It is the people that have the power. And as long as we have the power, then we can support the things that are a reflection of us. And what we think is important becomes the things that we really can see live. And so I want to make sure that all of you, if you have not done so today, consider becoming a subscriber to 90.7 KPFK right now today. Okay, let's get into another caller. And I wanted to play this P. Diddy clip, Gary. So we'll see if we got enough time to get into it before we leave. We might have to get into it next week. Might be a good conversation next week. But let's get into is it Mondragon from Long Beach or Mondragon?
Hi, good morning. This is Mondragon from Long Beach.
Mondragon, I love your name, my brother. Thank you for calling in. This is 90.7 KPFK. You are tuned in to Street SANKoFA. So talk to me. What do you got to say?
Hey, thank you for the show. I love your content always, and as always, I love your voice.
No doubt, my brother. Is this this is my guy from we met at the other event, right? That this is you?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I got your name now, man. I'll never forget.
I just want to share real quickly. I agree totally with the previous caller in regards to responsibility of the artist. I believe it's a shared responsibility as well with our community.
Yeah.
Speaking of listening to your topic this morning, it reminded me of a character, a wrestler on the WWE, a gentleman who's passed away by now. His name is Eddie Guerrero.
Okay.
And it's not my intention to speak ill of the dead because he has passed on. But I did have a major problem with him as a man myself, as a Chicano here living, and, with our black and brown community, our brothers and sisters out there.
Yeah.
Understanding, keeping in context that he did play a villain at times, but he had an entrance music that would play when he would come into the ring, and it would blast on the arenas and on national TV.
Okay. And
the chorus line was always, "We lie, we cheat, we steal."
Oh, wow.
We steal. And that was the chorus in this hip hop song that he would make an entrance to the ring in. And it really bothered me because, like I said, I understand that he was playing a character, a villain, but
Right.
he wasn't walking into the ring dressed like a European knight or a Pirate of the Caribbean or
Right. Right.
in a business suit with orange skin and a flopped over blonde dog hair come over,
Right.
coming dressed, and acting like a Chicano with flavor and culture and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
was out there, and I don't think that was an accident at all. But anyhow, I
Yeah.
tell you very much. I appreciate the show, appreciate KPFK and the content and topics you have. Thank you very much.
Man, thank you. And I appreciate your love and I appreciate you just listening in. It's always refreshing to see people in real life. So if we ever run into each other again, definitely come and make sure we break bread. So I appreciate all of my folks that are out there holding it down because listen, the music is important. And I think as my brother is saying that when you are looking at certain images, the music kind of couples that and it can make things more powerful or it can make things really salient or it can really make you feel very passionate because imagine coming out to no, this is a great example. One of my favorite things that I love, and I hope that I'm not saying it right, saying it wrong, but you all know when you look at the like the cultures of like the Asian islands and like the Cambodia and where's my guy The Rock from Dwayne Johnson. You know, when you get into folks that are from those islands and they do, I think it's called the hookah or the tuka. I need to find this out because I'm speaking and I'm not speaking correctly, but it's a chant. Haka. Thank you so much to my Facebook family holding me down, Jasmine. A haka. I have seen the haka performed, and it's so moving. And one of the things that really that stands out to me when I see the haka being performed, I saw it that performed for a young woman who was graduating from college, and her husband was in the audience. And as she's graduating from college, her husband literally is doing the haka for her by himself in a crowd full of people. And what am I saying? I'm saying that there's something very powerful when we can couple sound with rhythm and words. There is nothing that we cannot conjure if we couple word sound power with music. It's a recipe for beauty. It's a recipe for spirit. It's a recipe to connect with something greater than yourself. And so, as an artist, if you are ever given the microphone, either intentionally or unintentionally, you must admit and acknowledge that you are holding and yielding a powerful tool that has the potential to inspire, that has the potential to suppress, that has the potential to move people in any direction that you command. And so, again, as I end this episode of STReeT SANKoFA, I always want to make sure that I say the sentiment that if hip hop is not used for our liberation, it absolutely will be used for our destruction. And so, as we take our journey for today on STReeT SANKoFA, I want all of my artists out there to be very intentional about what you're doing because what you're doing has power and it has the potential to not only change lives, but to start a revolution. So I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Much love to Gary Baca always for holding me down. Gary, you know I could not do any of this without you. And of course, to all of my KPFK family, if you want to subscribe, please go to kpfk.org or you can go and call 818-985-5735 and ask to be a subscriber today. This has been another episode of STReeT SANKoFA. I will see you next Thursday. We're here first and second Thursdays at 7 a.m. All right, everybody. Love you. Bye. Okay. I think my KPFK just went off. Thank you so much for all my Facebook family for joining me in today. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. For all of my family who's going to be in Atlanta, I'll be hosting the Malcolm X Festival, and I'm getting so pumped, and I need to start advertising for it because it's about to go down. But we will be in Atlanta, Georgia, May, I believe it's the 17th, 18th, 19th for Malcolm X Festival weekend. It's about to go down. It's going to be amazing. I will see everybody there. I appreciate you. I love y'all. Stay tuned for next time. All right. Take care. Peace.